Welcome to the Family Skeptical, Parenting Through Nonbelief.
We're a married atheist couple raising two wonderful, strange children. We ask big questions, dissect weird parenting moments, and examine how society ignores or misrepresents families like ours. If you're any stripe of nonbeliever who's involved in raising children, welcome. You are our people.
Our kids have heard all our swears, but yours might not have. So be thoughtful if there are young people listening with you.
Happy New Year!
Indeed. It's going to be a ways away from New Year's when people hear this.
Okay. It doesn't mean that we can't wish them Happy New Year.
No, indeed. I
and
hope.
When they listen to it, it'll be the first episode of the new year.
No, it won't.
Really?
Yeah, we posted one on the 3rd.
Okay. Well, we wish them a Happy New Year in that episode?
I think we did. Or holidays, something.
Okay,
yeah.
Whatever. I take it back. May your new year be full of toil and strife.
Not really.
No, not really.
But for us, it was just New Year's.
Yes.
And it has been positively lovely.
Busy? Stressful?
Has it?
Yeah.
Okay. If
you don't think so?
Well, no. I mean,
in moments, maybe not like average, but there have definitely been some tough moments.
Yeah, for sure. This is like the first week I can talk. I had one of those 4-week coughs that's been going around. So it was quite the thing. I basically could not start a sentence to Pops without...
You couldn't finish a sentence.
Yes, I couldn't finish a sentence without breaking into a terrible hacking nonsense. But I think I'm finally on the mend. But no, I don't. Yeah, I guess stressful in moments, but not as stressful as some have felt. I mean, so nice. I think I'm just ready for like normality to kick back in.
Oh, yes.
Because we had many Christmases.
Yes.
Just, I think, all the Christmases.
Yeah, I think that really should be what we talk about family topic-wise today is the fact that we had 5 Christmases to the point where our youngest, termed it, the last one, Fifthmas, which I love.
Yes.
And I think that we should endeavor every holiday season to have a Fifthmas.
I don't know.
Is that too extreme?
I mean,
was that itself too stressful, having to keep track of all that?
Like each was lovely.
And different.
So in that way, it was truly beautiful.
It was a lot to keep track of.
And I think
it was a lot of eating.
The boys definitely just got in a mode of like, gifts just always happen.
It's just true.
Like, we just sort of, I don't know. So this is the joy of having divorced parents. When we go see Pops's folks, it's very simple because it's just one family. But when we go see mine, there's just a lot more people. So it became Fifthmas because we had gifts from my best friend and we were scheduled to go over to my mom's for Christmas proper. And they were, of course, antsy on Christmas morning. So the first Christmas was opening the presents from my best friend before we went to my mom's. Then there was Christmas at my mom's. Then we had a separate Christmas with my dad. Then we had a separate Christmas with my dad's extended family. And then your parents were awesome and came up after we returned home, and we had our Fifthmas with your parents at home. And that was
stop tour.
Yeah. It was really something, and like different traditions at every gathering.
And that's what I wanted to talk about is the skeptic in me then has to say, okay, well, actually, this is more utilitarianism, I think, is what was the utility of having 5 Christmases? And I think the boys having a look at like 5 different looks at holiday traditions, gift-giving paradigms, food paradigms, right? Paces, intensity levels. It was wonderful. Like at your aunt's house, when we did your dad's extended family, we got to watch like Die Hard 3 with your cousin, who himself is so lovely, but it was such like a different sort of, it was a different sort of vibe.
Yeah.
As it was with your dad and as it was with my parents. It was just, it was a great opportunity for the boys to look at the different traditions, none of which were religious. They were all like every celebration was secular, even with your Jesus-y aunt being at your dad's extended family. And so it was interesting because we see so many similar kinds of secular celebrations, but then they can start to see the nuances. Okay, what are the food differences? What's the pacing difference? Like my parents do the whole stocking thing. It's their only stocking experience. This season was only on Fifthmas, right? From my family, we do the sort of cryptic, riddly messages on the gifts.
I was going to bring that up. I love that.
That extra layer of pizzazz and awesomeness to gift giving. And so I don't know, like having all those different looks lets them help triangulate like what version of the secular side of Christmas they gravitate towards, right? Like, cause then they can apply, their own skepticism and say, okay, well, this works for me. That doesn't. My version is this, because they have like all this data to pull from now. It's not just like one tradition where they get surprised when they see other people's traditions. They have multiple within the same season. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think also just like the outpouring of love from everybody was so touching. And just to see that in so many different environments with so many different types of people. It was really, really special.
Plus, started to really connect with one of my favorite holiday movies, which is the 1970 Scrooge musical.
Oh, yeah.
With all those songs.
It's a really amazing one.
Yeah. Albert Finney transforms.
Yeah. No, that's an astounding performance.
And then him deciding he wants to watch it when we're like driving.
Yeah.
To Wisconsin. It was magic. So that was fun too.
Since you brought that up, I think the other fun thing about this holiday season is another thing that we love about the holidays recently. It means we get a new season of the new All Creatures Great and Small. Just so good. And a couple of years we had tried to watch it with the boys and they just were not ready for it. There was not enough action. There was too much talking. The subtlety of the character interactions, they were just too young to get. But we thought, maybe they're ready for it this year. And they are really ready for it. And we're rolling through. We finished season 1. We're on to season 2. And it's about veterinary practice in the Yorkshire Dales based on the classic books, taking place right before the start of World War II. And the head of the veterinary practice, his name is Siegfried. It is an amazing character. In the original series that I watched when I was a kid, there was just like a great performance for that character that I thought could never be beat. I don't know if it's been beat, but like the new interpretation is certainly as good and is just amazing. And there is a scene where Siegfried gives one of his classic looks And the boys just cracked up so hard. And I was like, yes, we're there. And the fact that they can watch that means we can watch so many other things.
Mm-hmm.
So I am so excited about 2024, just like pushing the envelope even farther with what we've shown them. I think it's going to be really exciting.
Well, the other BBC holiday tradition is Doctor Who, and I can't wait to start that with them.
I know. And I think they're totally ready for it, except for how scary it can get. Yeah. It's not often, but when they do it quite well. And I think particularly Reader, it's a type of horror that would trigger him. So I think we have to wait.
Because he's good with some kinds of horror.
Oh, yeah.
Totally fine with creature horror. It's the supernatural stuff. The cosmic-y stuff that really gets him.
Yeah, I think the Weeping Angels are too much and a few other things. So
yeah,
but
I think Go will love the Ood.
Oh, I mean, they'll both love so many parts.
He's going to dress up as an Ood, holding a little glowing ball. Yeah,
yeah.
The Ood. Sorry, I have to do the David Tennant Scottish brogue. The Ood.
But yeah, it's been good and sort of. I don't know how, but we sort of dialed in everybody. We're like, everybody gave the most thoughtful gifts to the boys. And everything they got is stuff that they're going to use tons. Sometimes I'm sort of like, oh man, we got so much stuff. And some of it's just going to be, there's just so much. But like, it really just feels like everything was so appreciated. Yeah. And everything will be wonderful. And they've been building all like the crazy Lego sets they got. So it was,
wearing all the holiday clothing.
Reading the books.
Yeah, doing all the things.
Yeah.
No, so it was good. And Fifthmas might become a thing some years. And that's okay because it worked out. I had my doubts, but I went into it with an open mind and we exited largely unscathed.
Yeah.
But it was hard, like the back and forth and all the family groups, even though the pace was less frenetic as it has been in past years, just the requirement to manage all the relationships for people that I'm not necessarily related to in like, not my parents. Yes, I'm related to them, but my marriage is different. My inherited relationships. It's a lot for my neurodivergence. I really have to buckle down some days, like during holidays like that, and take a lot of deep breaths and work through how I'm going to keep my energy up throughout all of that and keep my attitude positive and outgoing as much as possible, even if I have to like put on a mask to do so, metaphorically.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it. I overcame, and the boys had a blast, which was the most important part.
You were amazing.
Well, thank you. It took effort.
So for our first topic, we posted an episode, but it was just like random stuff. So for our first real topic of 2024, I'm excited to talk to you about this because it's something I've actually wondered about our entire relationship.
Oh boy.
So I was listening to Under the Influence by Joe Piazza, which is a great podcast about mom influencers and how kind of that influencer economy affects us. And she had an episode about parenting advice and all of the sort of parenting advice influencers out there. And basically in that episode, the take was, well, first, and I agree with this, so just sort of laying this down, like there's small amounts of parenting advice that are just like, this is important to keep your kids alive. And that's very important. So that's like car seats you have to get right, and safe sleep habits when they're babies to avoid as much as possible SIDS. And like those two things are really important. And all the science says, like, do it that way. It's much better for your kids. It's a way to avoid disaster. So like that's important. But that basically the rest of parenting advice can kind of go fuck itself, that like so much of it is just about making parents feel bad about themselves, and is also, except for like a very few number of people, not particularly scientifically accurate. And then right after that, she posted an article with her advice for new parents. I think she sort of like admits that like there are issues with parenting advice, but she posted her article with her advice for new parents. And I thought that was great. And I thought, and the advice was really good. So I think there is a weird world of parenting advice where I feel both of those things. And I really think this plays into the concept of being skeptical parents, because we talk a lot about looking at the reality of things and question what we do and like trying to look for what's real. Mm-hmm. And so I think parenting advice plays into that and doesn't. And I am very curious how you feel about the kind of parenting advice economy.
Oh man, that is such an interesting question, moms. I think that all advice, I'm going to back up. I like to view advice from two lenses. One, the same lens that I would use if I'm reading like biography, a historical document, whatever. Like I would look for the context, right? I'd look for the person's bias, right? I'd look for the cues that would lead them to that advice through their upbringing, their parenting, the whole nature nurture thing. Where are they in their lives right now that would motivate them to give that advice or to think that advice is valid? And the other lens that I would view it from would be the lens of, how to term this, like the BS detector lens, mm-hmm. right? That you want to look at why the person is giving you this advice. But then you also obviously need to take a look at what the advice is, right? And sometimes those play off of each other. Like sometimes the what drives the person to share it. Like it could be something they didn't come up with, but because they respect another influencer, celebrity, whatever, yada, yada, that they're compelled to share it because they also trust that person's opinion on all these other things, right? Mm-hmm. That maybe they're in some sort of information silo when it comes to parenting, as like we saw with all the trad wife stuff, that it can be a very sort of insular set of information that they draw from to come to their conclusions, and that can lead them to have similar opinions about things. And they're not alone in that. Like everybody is prone to this sort of thing. Myself, yourself included. It's just the way that we operate, especially now in this day of online interaction, where people will more rapidly coalesce around ideas, form ideological groups. And so when it comes to parenting advice, I would look at it from that skeptical side of, why are they telling this to me? And then, is it valuable? Does it work? Does it work for me? Could it work for somebody else? Again, what is my context, right? Like if somebody gives me advice about, how to make your kids eat more healthy food, I mean, I'll listen. If it's in person, I'll listen out of courtesy, or if it's an article, I might skim it to see if there's anything I'm missing. But since our kids already eat fruits and vegetables and protein sources that also include plant-based protein sources and all sorts of different animal-based sources, and they drink a lot of water, like I am less concerned about hearing advice like that, because they already are, in my humble opinion, kind of ticking that box, right? Mm-hmm. But if it's something else that I think that they might need more help with, like managing expectations for screen time, or managing stress with sibling interactions, that sort of stuff, like I would read that I would take that under more heavy consideration, because that's something that I view them as needing maybe more help with, or us as needing more help with helping them with. So it again, it would come down to our context. Also, then the utility, and then do I trust that this advice is coming from them in a robustly honest, intellectually honest way?
So I would say when the boys were young, I searched out a lot of parenting advice.
You really did.
And
it was commendable how much you researched the whole process.
And it was definitely my gateway into like all of the parenting media that I now follow. And I feel like you did not have that urge at all.
No.
And I'm curious about that, because as a skeptic and somebody who puts a lot of faith in well, yeah, okay, sorry.
I value.
Yes, somebody who puts a lot of value in science and research. I am curious why you didn't really have an urge to do that kind of research.
That's a great question. I specifically wanted to do it my way and to seek out help when we realized that help was really actually needed. Like if we knew we were going to have a special needs child, I'm sure I would have researched more.
Yeah.
Because that would, especially like the condition, obviously I would want to be as much of a lay expert as possible in my child's condition, such that I would be able to predict outcomes of treatments. I would be able to anticipate, the child's needs on a moment to moment basis, so I could make my child as comfortable, as happy, and as productive as possible, so that my child could grow to his or her fullest potential. But since that wasn't the case, I wanted to instead lean on my experience in teaching other people's children and viewing how other people interact with their children for so many years. And then also my innate desire to be a parent, my enthusiasm for being a parent, and then see where that took us. And also I trusted you. Like I trusted that I shouldn't have.
I had zero experience. I mean,
you didn't let me finish my thought.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I trusted you to go through, as you seem to be really bent on doing, all of this parenting media. And if you found something that you thought that I should check out, that I also felt compelled to check out, that I would. And some things I did and some things I didn't. Honestly, like there are some books you recommended that I read that I didn't read. There are some resources that you suggested I check out that I totally poured over. And so again, just like with everybody else, I looked at where you were coming from and what my own personal context was, and I filtered your advice through that. And I thought to myself, this will work until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, I'll change what I'm doing. And it continued to work. The boys are doing great. Are there things that I could have done better? I suppose, but there are always going to be things that you can do better. Oh, yeah. And I ultimately think that the outcome of our kids speaks for itself. They're doing great, and they are themselves.
I don't assume you remember, but just out of pure curiosity, can you think of anything I suggested you look at that you did really find helpful?
Oh my gosh. I mean, you sent me a lot of articles and stuff, and I would that was easy to digest. So I would click through, and sometimes I would scan and sometimes I would pore over. I seem to remember you sent me a really good one about, differences in educational approaches when we were looking at, when I was actually going around and interviewing different schools.
Oh, yeah.
For Reader. And based on what you recommended, and then in conjunction with my own direct experience in visiting some of these schools and talking to the administrators that were giving the tours, I realized what would work. And we found a great school as a result of it. We really did. I mean, it was LA, so it was expensive as hell, but it worked out fine. The boys did great. They had, and because of that, they were able, I credit that school with equipping them with the tools necessary to transition to going to a totally different country and going to a totally different school. And at no point ever having separation anxiety.
Yes.
It was magical.
I do think the very good experience they had at their
magical
preschool.
They transitioned so well to school here where we live now.
Yeah.
I was totally blown away, especially with Go, who can be a bit of a delicate soul.
Yeah, and he had to transition to a different daycare and to new school.
Yes.
When Reader just went from preschool to actual school, which he would have done in LA anyways.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's really interesting. I think...
Because I do value your advice. You're a very smart person.
I am.
You are. And I like hearing your thoughts. I ask for your help and your advice on all sorts of things daily. But when it came to this one thing, I was bound and determined to trust my instincts a bit. I don't know. That's kind of the easiest way for me to put it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think I felt differently because I had no experience with kids.
I totally get it.
I had done a tiny bit of babysitting, for the most part, very badly. I wasn't very good at it. And I did not feel comfortable with babies. I was not, there were some sort of kid situations where I would jump in, but didn't feel super comfortable jumping in with kids. And yeah, so I was very uncertain of myself. And Reader was an interesting first child because he wasn't, I don't think Reader was particularly difficult, but he was, I feel like he was just a hard read. A lot of the first couple of months with him, I just felt like we were sort of staring at each other like, I don't know, what do you think we should do? It was interesting. I don't know. When I think about parenting advice, I always think about the book, Oh Crap, Potty Training as the perfect distillation of the issues with parenting advice. Because as you mentioned, the boys were both at a preschool. When Reader went into the classroom before the classroom where he would have to be potty trained, which I think was, we can never remember, 3 or 4-year-old. They had to be, we think it was 3, right? For the 3-year-old room?
Just keep talking.
Okay, whatever. So whatever classroom was before the classroom where they had to be potty trained, when he entered it, the teacher had taken us aside and said, for the next classroom, they're going to need to be potty trained, but don't worry, we work on it a ton in this classroom and we got it.
Ha!
Well, the thing is, that
not necessarily their fault.
Not their fault. And that preschool was great. And they did so much. I hear stories about other people's daycare experiences, and I feel so bad that they were not able to have the experience that we did. Because I've heard about kids with biting problems where the school threatened to throw them out. And both of our kids had short periods of issues with biting. And their teachers were so understanding. And I talked to them and I was like, what was so hard is they didn't exhibit any of that behavior at home. So there was really no way for us to parent them out of it because we were never there in the moment. And the teachers were so great about not vilifying them because of it, recognizing that it's a thing that a lot of kids go through, so anyways, they really help with a lot of things, a ton. But what happened in that classroom is that there was some turnover, which happens in preschools and daycares, and different teachers came in. And I think it just got dropped. So we were like weeks away from Reader transitioning to this new classroom, and he was totally not potty trained.
Oh, no, not even close.
We hadn't done a thing because we're just like, oh, they got it. And then we just sort of were like,
oh, crap. Oh. Potty training.
Exactly. But here's the thing. And I can't remember if I don't know how, I can't remember if I read that book like in a mad rush realizing it, or if I had sort of read it before when I was just thinking about potty training. I don't know. I don't know how it happened, but I either like read it in that moment or I had read it when I was thinking about it before. But that book is so interesting because what's great about it is that it worked for us. And like, I fully understand that there are probably lots of kids that it wouldn't work for, but they have this system where you just have your kids be naked from the waist down for 3 days. You keep them in an area where like there's not carpeting. So if there's an accident, it's not terrible. And I got to say, it worked with both boys. In that mad rush, we did it with Reader and it totally worked. And then because it worked so well, we did the same thing with Go and it worked again. Also, we had 2 boys. I don't know how people have fared with it with girls. Who knows? And I would not have known how to do it. If it had not been for that book, I have no idea how we would have potty trained him over a long weekend. Just, it wouldn't have happened. I don't know. So that was brilliant. The other thing about that book is it is so judgy. And if you are having problems potty training, it would make you feel like crap. It would be the other meaning of the title. It has so much awful advice about how, like, if you don't potty train by this point, your kid is going to have troubles like way into adulthood. It is such a fear-mongering book, but its system saved our asses.
Yeah.
So to me, it's like both sides. And I think as a skeptic, like, one of the issues is with all of this behavioral stuff, there's advice, but it's not like other things where, like, if you look at enough kids, you can find something that's going to work for everybody. At best, if you've done really good research, you can make suggestions about what works for a larger percentage of kids. But when it comes from behavioral stuff, like, the thing that works for the majority of kids might not work with your child.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always going to be a little bit difficult on that level. But on the other hand, I do think there are things that come up where, like, you just need to hear how other people have handled it. Because sometimes there's situations where you're like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, it didn't happen to me as a kid. I remember when Reader is such a good sleeper now. He's just like dead to the world the second he goes out. But when
It'd be nice if he was like that for the first year of his life.
Oh my God. It was impossible. And there were parts of it.
I hear that sound in my nightmares. You think he's asleep, then you stop patting and walking him, and then the weakest little cry. It's so sad, which means also you have another hour of work left to do.
Yeah. It took us sometimes upwards of 3 hours.
I think I'm still tired from that. I think that's why I'm tired all the time, because he sucked my life out in that first year.
But he was so hard to put to sleep. He was so hard to put down for a nap. I was just like, I could not figure out what to do with my days. And at the time I had been working in entertainment, and I was still doing sort of like a side gig with this lovely documentary producer who had kids. And she's like, oh, I read this thing that gives you this like schedule. And what was nice about it is it wasn't so much a like at this time, do something, but it was like, you have to do your day in this order. So like you have to feed and then play and then nap. And it wasn't perfect. And it's not like his sleep ever got great, but at least it gave me a way to kind of focus our days.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really helpful. And I just wouldn't have known. I was just like flailing. I didn't I did not know how to handle the situation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are tons of people that did not work for. And if somebody
Right.
gave it to them and was like, oh, this is a solution, and then it didn't work, that would feel like incredibly demoralizing. But I just needed some framework to make our days manageable. And I was so happy to have it.
Well, I'm so torn, like in retrospect, because again, like speaking as a neurodivergent person, like as you saw today when I got stressed out, start at the beginning of the day, knowing everything that I had to do, like knowing that I had actually a schedule, but even the schedule wasn't necessarily enough. Cause I didn't know if I would be able to actually fit everything in.
Mm-hmm.
And so that generated a lot of anxiety because I need the schedule, and woe betide a schedule that gets broken. And so I like that structure. I have sought out as an adult various developmental programs for writing and all sorts of things that give me sort of like an algorithmic sense of how to improve. And I found that I operate well under those circumstances, but it is a lot more structure than a lot of other people would probably seek out, but that's just the way my brain works. And also I have to constantly fight the urge to judge myself and punish myself and have a negative impression of myself. And so both of those together, I guess it's good that I sidestepped a lot of parenting advice because I would have been attracted to the algorithmic nature of, oh, here's this thing, plug it into your life and you will have a success. Ta-da. But then also, oh, the algorithm didn't work. You should kill yourself now or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, obviously it's not that extreme, but that's like, I would have felt very bad and demoralized. I think it would have negatively impacted me as a parent. And I think I'm a good parent.
Yeah.
And I think that I've succeeded to a large extent. And I guess in retrospect, it's good that I didn't fall down a rabbit hole like you did. But for you, it was good. It worked.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it wouldn't necessarily have had that positive outcome that it did with you. Even digesting the same material. I didn't even think about that until now. That's like, wow, mind blown.
That's super interesting.
But again, that's not something that I would have actually probably come to had I not come to grips with my own neurodivergence. And, fun fact, I'm actually getting tested for autism in March, and I could not be more excited one way or the other.
Yay!
I'm very happy that we have an opportunity to do that now. Where we live now, the country, I love it otherwise in so many ways. But oh my gosh, the issues with psychiatric care where we live are just, I feel bad saying it's criminal because the psychiatrists who are working where we live now are so slammed. Like the caseload is crushing, and there's just an absolute shortage of trained psychiatrists, therapists, and psychologists. Like that can't, like, how that, like, you incentivize that as a local government or provincial government or national government. You make it so that people are drawn to the profession, so you don't have this like complete lack of caregivers. Because for me, it isn't a necessity as much as it might be for somebody else.
But for people we
still are waiting. I submitted a formal request in April. We are closing in on a year since I made that request.
Mm-hmm.
And while it's not the screaming urgency, if I do have this diagnosis, then I actually become eligible for care, for services that could potentially help me with my interpersonal relationships, with my anxiety, with, sort of resources that would help me be more, professionally, let's say, adequate when it comes to people skills, like things that would actually help me cope better as a parent. Like that's stuff that directly impacts my life and my livelihood. And that matters to me and to us.
Mm-hmm.
And so to not have that be good enough for the government to look, like lightly upon us for is demoralizing. And so it was very nice that when we're back in the States in March, we were able to set up this virtual thing. And so I'm very excited that we'll be able to, one way or another, like start to winnow down possibilities for what is actually going on in my head. That would be very useful.
Yeah. And
so side note.
And I think the thing I always think about with this type of care is that when you're dealing with those issues,
mm-hmm.
it's like doubly hard to sort through what you have to sort through to get care.
Mm-hmm.
Like finding a good therapist is so hard.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you're in the midst of something, that process of like trying somebody out, and if it doesn't work, finding somebody else, like it's all
mm-hmm.
just, that's hard when you're like coping well. And so I just think about what that must be like when people aren't. So, yeah.
It really makes me step back and say, I mean, what do some families do? And I mean, I've taught kids on spectrum. I've taught kids with special needs. I've taught adults with special needs. I've taught adults with special needs who have kids who don't have special needs. I've taught like so many angles of this situation. And then to find myself doing these, like finding myself having done a bunch of these, are you autistic questionnaires on a lark, and then all of them basically coming back positive. It's just such an interesting situation to find myself in. But yeah, moms, you're right. Like for us, it's not a screaming urgency, but what if it was? What if you need it and you can't get it? What if you need it quickly and you might have been able to get it, but the gears of the medical government did not turn quickly enough for you? It's wild thinking about how hard it can be for some people to actually get the medical care and the psychiatric care that they absolutely need. And from a humanist standpoint, like, I mean, if I could snap my fingers about anything in society, like the efficacy and availability and ease of use of medical and psychiatric care might be at the top of the list, because think about everything that would be solved if the majority of people could address their situations that simply.
Yeah.
Financial, crime, overall well-being, productivity in the workplace, how much art could be generated further by people who learn how to manage their demons instead of necessarily succumbing to them because they don't have the support they need. Like, I know it's not perfect, even if somebody has all those resources, but how many more lives could be saved and how many more families could be enriched?
Yeah.
I want Star Trek to be real.
I know. Well, and just coming back, you sort of said it, but just coming back to the topic of parenting advice.
Yeah.
Trying to think about any one piece of advice, or the only other thing I was going to say about it is, I think these sort of like one-off books about a certain thing, like sleep training or not sleep training or potty training, like those can be very judgy. The ones that I worry about even more are the like whole systems of parenting, like some people get very involved in kind of a whole philosophy of training. I never could remember if it's RIE or RIE parenting.
Yeah.
But like that's one of them. And again, like I think it has a lot of beautiful elements and things that can be taken from it.
Well, you get sucked in, right? Like you're like, this is working, so this other thing has to work. And if it doesn't work for me, then I'm the broken person.
Well, like you said, when we were looking at preschools, one we looked at that had really lovely things about it, they were like fully used that parenting style. And there were other reasons it didn't work, but I was like, we just can't do this, because I'm sure there are a few things that we're going to want to do differently, and I don't know if it's going to be
and that administrator gave me a weird vibe.
Yeah, well, like you had to do parenting courses with them, and I don't even mind that, but just because of the system, it just felt like it could get weird if we disagreed about things.
Yeah, it feels almost like cultish.
I think if you like put all of your eggs in that basket, but just thinking about any of them, to think about any system or any advice that could really meet the needs of every kind of family, like it probably doesn't exist.
Well, it really is like they package it like a religion, in that they first convince you that they are the resource that you need to follow above all others.
Yeah.
And that when you go to buy resources regarding your child, you go to them first and you give them your money. And, if their lessons were more universally applicable, I would say, okay, maybe, but they aren't. It's like something like parenting is so necessarily dynamic and so necessarily varied that you can't, like, you if you don't pick and choose and you don't try out different approaches, then I think that is the sign of a parent who needs to work more. Is you have to have that skeptical lens, and you have to turn that most fiercely upon your own behavior. And there are things that I've done, right? Like most recently, here's a great example: the validation method. Reader has a therapist who's really great, and she completely reformed how I am handling readers' big emotional moments. Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
And I thought that was something in our relationship that I had totally covered. My experience teaching kids for so long completely insulated me from needing to worry about it. I could do that thing. But then she showed us this thing that works better.
Yeah. And it's so simple.
And it's exact. And it's what I have learned that I need to do to myself. And it's what I've told you to do with me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's profound. And it's just the validation method where you just validate, and then shut up and walk away and let the person work through that potential solution, that unwinding of the emotional state, that resolution. Let them work it out themselves. After you validate their feelings, you give them that space where they feel comfortable crafting their solutions, processing it on their own, becoming more emotionally resilient as a result. And is it perfect? No, nothing is, but it works better than what I was doing. And what I was doing was working okay. Mm-hmm. But I had a blind spot. And the moment that she said it, I was like, I have not been skeptical enough with my own stuff. And so I'm going to be more skeptical with that. And I tried it and it worked better than anything that I had ever done. So there you go. Pops did the thing that he tells other people to do more often than not, or not tells. I don't tell anybody to do it. Who am I? But it's a good nudge to be skeptical in yourself more often than anybody else. And I did that, and there you go. It worked for me. Definitely works. If it works for me, it works for anybody. Because I get locked in my ways and my methods and my routines. And that can be a good thing, but it also is itself a blind spot.
I knew this topic was going to go long.
But it's good.
Yeah. But I
love this honesty thing. And also, guys, the whole thing with like setting this appointment to do the autism diagnosis, the ASD diagnosis, just filling out the intake and the diagnostic questionnaires, just speaking those things my truths out there into the world where a professional would read them and start to work out how to talk to me about these things felt like such a burden off of my shoulders. So if you have even an inkling, or if somebody has suggested that you should, perhaps, talk to somebody about something that's bothering you, big or small, something you're having a hard time reconciling, coping with. You suspect that you experienced a trauma that you're just now coming to grips with existing in your past, because sometimes that takes years just to accept that it happened or even could have happened. You go and talk to somebody about it, because it is a very liberating thing, even though it requires facing something that is painful, stressful, unknown, potentially completely upending to how you view yourself as a person. Maybe requiring that you recategorize yourself, perhaps, or that you join a new demographic of people who are that person now. That's okay. And talking to somebody about it is perhaps the best thing you could ever do for yourself and your children. That's it. There you go. You were saying about this topic going long. I just made it longer. You're welcome.
Okay, but I have a little mini 5-minute second topic.
Great, let's do it.
Since we've been talking about parenting advice, I wonder if there's any nugget of parenting advice that you feel confident sharing, when
aside from what I just did.
Well, yeah. Oh, okay, but that's more like fine. Life advice. I'm talking about like parenting advice. Like I've been in baby showers where like everybody has to go around and give their piece of parenting advice. Is there anything that you actually like have confidence in sharing?
Yes. Oh, how about this? When your kid has an enthusiasm to try something new, do it with them.
Oh, that's so sweet. Yeah.
It's real simple, but it's profound. And you might find that you like it more than your kid does, and your kid stops doing the thing and you keep going with it. Who knows? But in general, I'm practicing saying yes more. Part of my neurodivergence involves social anxiety, and I'm just making an effort to say yes to more things. And that's part of it. Is your kid wants to do a new thing. Why does it just have to be for your kid? Why can't it be for you too?
I love that. The only advice I ever give. So I guess after this episode, I would add the advice to like just take what's useful from all parenting advice and leave the rest and feel comfortable doing that. But the piece of parenting advice that I always give in those situations is that in the first year of life, my experience was whatever you are worried about and is making you lose sleep about your kid, in 1 to 2 months in that first year, everything will be different. And it could all be worse. It doesn't necessarily get better, but it'll just be 100% different. Yeah. And I wish somebody had told me that, because in that first year, things are so intense. They're moving so fast. And whatever you're worried about, and slow.
The longest, shortest time.
Yes. Whatever, is consuming you just feels like everything. Mm-hmm. And I just wish I'd known that, like, though it's not easy. And you're thinking you're doing
everything wrong.
Yeah. That whatever it is, it's just bound to change.
Yeah. That was a zesty episode.
Yeah.
That was like taking a bite of a Reaper and then doing a shot of maple syrup. That was a little bit of everything.
Well, no, it's something I've always been curious about, are different kind of takes on that.
Does it surprise you that I just had like a complete overconfidence in my own experience professionally, where I was like, yeah, I got this.
I don't know. Yeah, I truly did not know. Like I did not know. So I feel like I've learned something new about you.
Yeah, shucks.
Okay, so we need to wrap it up there. As always, we have to thank Jonathan Zalbin and First Frame Music for the music for this podcast.
And that wraps up this episode of The Family Skeptical, where nothing is sacred except for our kids.
We kept it to an hour.
Yay,
did you see that?
Us. Yeah, no, that was pretty much exactly an hour.
Yeah. It never happens.
Oh, now I want to give you a hug.
I'll come in and give you a hug while we finish it, while we wait for it to finish uploading.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.